I'm back. I took a couple of days off, had stuff that I had to take care of, had to go out of town. But I'm back and I figure let's talk about something that people are talking about that I really doubt exists. I mean, it exists, but not quite the way people make it out to be. And I do have some concerns about the term cultural Marxism. Now, I've been hearing that term for a while. And to me, cultural Marxism in the year 2021, we call it woke recently. And then prior to that, we call it the SJW. We call it political correctness another time. And then there was a time we just called it liberals. And what I mean by that is that, whatever aspects of the left that the right doesn't like, they kind of they got to go and use a term that I don't think they fully understand what it means. That's not everybody on the right, but anyway, we need to clear this up. And I'm personally am convinced that there's really no such a thing as cultural Marxism. I don't claim to be an expert on it. But what I understand about it, it's not it's not cultural Marxism. It's not Marxism in any way that people historically interpret Marxism. Well, I mean, and I'm not even a Marxist, but what I'm trying to say is that, like for example, you know, um, I'm not going to say that Karl Marx was the first socialist or the first communist. I'm not going to say that, but he was the man that kind of really launched that thought. And you could say that such movements existed prior, existed in various societies around the world in some scale or another, or you had thinkers that believed that we could do better collectively as a community. And they didn't have a name for it. Um, but it will eventually, what will eventually be called socialism or communism or the left. And these terms are terms, and even with the left, I mean, the term left versus right actually had really nothing to do with Marx initially, had more to do with the outcome of the French Revolution between those that adhere to the idea of the monarchy and that tradition, and the bourgeois class that were commoners but very well to do. They would be considered conservatives today, but they served in the left side of the National Assembly in the French Parliament. I mean, and that sort of thing. So, I mean, there's all kinds of movements and terms that kind of ended up being at one side or the other, and ended up being eventually that the left will mean liberalism, it will mean socialism, it will mean communism, it will mean the whole gamut, just as on the right it meant traditional center right conservatism, and then taken to its most extreme monarchist, and then take it to the most extreme ugly form fascism. So and that what is now the authoritarian left and the authoritarian right, and each side becomes more moderate and more moderate toward it, gravitates toward democracy. What I said just makes sense to me. If it doesn't make any sense to you, I'm sorry. But anyway, well, as I said, Marx started this movement in the 19th century that really got it started in, and it would eventually divide between those that adhere to people like Edward Bernstein, who came up with the idea of what would become democratic socialism or social democracy, or Lenin's interpretation of Marxism in Russia, which would become Marxist Leninism becoming communism, and Stalinism, Trotskyism, Maoism, all that came out of there. Whereas the center left came out of the Bernstein movement. Well, we go and evolve into times that seem, even though it's generations ago, you could say it's part of our modern political discourse. In America, it was called the New Deal consensus, and in Western Europe, it was called social democracy. And under the New Deal consensus here in the United States and social democracy in Europe, which even Western Stalinists that were playing nice with the system would will work officially or unofficially with social democrats to create and maintain the welfare state, which turned out to be so successful that most mainstream conservatives in those societies do not touch those social programs, and even some of them ended up, uh, you know, liking these social programs. I've often said in the year 2021 that Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany, who is whose party is a center right party called the Christian Democratic Union, that she and most people from the CDU in Germany would be to the left of Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Barack Obama and and all the corporate Democrats here in the United States that like um, like corporate sponsorships and corporate donations and that sort of thing. Well, New Dealism, social democracy, that sort of thing, the old left kind of evolved with the class struggle that was part of social democracy, part of the New Deal consensus. It became the new left in the 1960s. And that's where I think things started to change. I know there's the Frankfurt School. I know about that. I know about the critical theories and all of this. But I think that basically with the old left, that's the New Deal liberals, that's the Social Democrats in Europe, and what they had done was so successful in transforming class-based politics that created a prosperous middle class for the common people that that their offsprings started to think beyond class and start to go into liberation movements, whether it's feminism, which has been around for prior, but it was given a great emphasis in the new left, gay liberation, civil rights, which racial equality, which the old left largely favored, but it was enough of a disinterest and even some sections, maybe even some racism in the old left that it wasn't given the proper support that it needed to be given. Um, and I think that the old left versus new left is where we're kind of at today. And I would say that here in America, and with the Reagan Revolution and with the Thatcher Revolution in the UK, this is where things started to be where we're at today. And that social democracy and the New Deal liberal consensus were so successful that a lot of people who became conservatives that benefit from aspects of the New Deal and here in the United States and social democracy abroad, they take it for granted themselves in a lot of ways. And with the culture war that exists, they seem to forget how they got to where they're at in life. And the same thing can be said about their offsprings that ended up supporting these liberation struggles. Both sides, the conservatives that have benefited from New Deal liberalism and social democracy that created so much prosperity that their offspring ended up also forgetting about a class perspective. And so class was thrown out of the way. And you have this culture war that exists right now between, between the in America, the red state versus blue state seem to dominate the discourse. Now, recently, I'm hearing people like Dinesh D'Souza claiming are talking about this thing called identity socialism, which is kind of a farce. He's taken what was a farce and exaggerating it, claiming that kind of the replacement theory that the white straight family structure will be replaced by the other, what he thinks is the other, which is really weird because he's a brown person going to go and talk about this sort of thing in a self-loading sort of way, in my opinion. But he's being paid to spout off, and he's a sincere grifter. I mean, he believes this shit. Unlike Dave Rubin or Candace Owens or people like that, they're paid to to talk these talking points. Now with Milo Yiannopoulos suddenly becoming a heterosexual, right? Um, Also, a paid grifter to, then again, now he's claiming to be straight because he wants to create a lot of shock, so it wasn't working for him anymore. So I guess Dave Rubin can kind of continue being the gay right wing darling while Milo goes around and makes self hatred a positive aspect, which is sad. But the Dinesh D'Souza talks about identity socialism. He's saying, well, with the way the socialists used to be, it was based on class, and now it's based on race, gender, sexual orientation, and the divide politics. Divide politics. People like Dinesh D'Souza has been on the side of dividing all this time to defend the whites, to defend those who the heterosexual supremacists, those who are, you know, those who seek to hold on to their privilege. And the thing about it is, what I find very disconcerting about people like Dinesh D'Souza is that during the Bush Cheney years with the war on terror, while the left were being demonized for correctly opposing the war. And eventually, a lot of conservatives realized that the lefties were correct about the Iraq War. You don't hear many of them talk about it. Yeah, you got jackasses around like Liz Cheney and her dad, Dick Cheney, that talks about the Iraq War, for example, being a good thing and all that, or talking heads like Sean Hannity. But right now, it's war is no longer a partisan issue. But anyway, Dinesh D'Souza committed treason, as far as I'm concerned, with his book, 9/11, and the let's see, what was the name of that book by Dinesh D'Souza? I'm trying to think of the name of that Dinesh D'Souza book. Let's see, what's it called? I'm sorry, it slipped my mind the title of that book. Um, it was the 9/11 book, and I cannot think of the name of it. Such a horrendous man he is. Let's see what son of a biscuit. Let's see what was the name of that stupid book he wrote. Let's see here. Authorship. The Enemy at Home, the Cultural Left, and its Responsibility for 9/11. And let me tell you what that piece of crap was all about. The premise of that book was basically that the Islamic world the traditionalists, the conservatives, were triggered or offended by secular leftism in the West. Women's equality, um, a secular society that, a state or a society that was not theocratic, and equality for the LGBTQ community, which in the West is mountains more advanced than across the ocean over there in the Middle East. However, he is basically saying to these radical clerics that, hey, we got more in common with each other than those lefties over there. So let's go and have this joint campaign to basically cancel the Western left. And that was basically my interpretation of his book. During those years when Ward Churchill made some controversial 9/11 truther comments, or someone like Noam Chomsky, you don't even have to be a lefty. You could be Ron Paul and say some of the same thing. These people, like Dinesh D'Souza and his neoconservative and Christian right friends, evangelicals, are like, yes, the left, fire Ward Churchill, fire, those professors, no Chomsky's a traitor, this country. And I mean, it'll be like, look at those people in the mainstream media talking smack against our precious George W. Bush. It would be silliness like that. Oh, arrest them, shut down the media. Well, I mean, it was that sort of thing. And he is such a demagogue because now he's talking about identity socialism. And basically, what all it is cultural Marxism, identity socialism, whatever you want to call it. It's just called political correctness. The people who practice this sort of thing are not even concerned about issues like income inequality, which affects all people in this country these days. It was a problem prior to COVID. COVID made it worse. And and this does not mean someone like myself. I mean, I can see why people would think I'm a class reductionist. I mean, there is a little bit of that in me. I admit that I focus a lot on class, but here's the thing: I believe that if you go and saw the economic plights of the people, and that would mean expanding union rights, make sure that living wage jobs become a thing again. It would mean universal health care, particularly Medicare for all, as it's done in Canada, or the National Health Service, as it's done in Great Britain, to protect people from the medical insurance complex, which is destroying people's finances and are actually the true death panels. So Sarah Palin was wrong when she talked about the death panels being existing in universal healthcare nations. We have death panels in the United States today. It's called private health insurance companies. But anyway, you solve a lot of people's economic woes, you're going to have more tolerance than you can handle. You're going to have more people affirming, more accepting people. You would never get rid of hatred and racism per se, but I can guarantee you that you'll see a hell of a lot less of it, and that is the cure. Um, Not what the right wing wants is which is the movement conservative recipe of more crony capitalism, and wrapped up in intolerance, pretending that they're the true tolerant ones when they're not, and more war, as opposed to the faux left or the pseudo left, the Democrats, just like the Republicans. They're there to advance their causes, and while I think it's wonderful that they believe in tolerance, tolerance, it will be meaningless unless people are financially in a situation where they're not suffering anymore. So, and I'm also concerned by the term cultural Marxism because, a lot of the professors that were associated with the Frankfurt School, they escaped Germany for a reason in the 1930s. And we know why they escaped Germany. And they weren't the bad guys in regard to the Frankfurt School. The people that were after the Frankfurt School in Germany were the bad guys, the Nazis. So I'm a little concerned. I don't believe that everybody who misuses the term cultural Marxism, I don't think that they're consciously promoting anti-Semitism. And I think if they deeply think about it, they would kind of drift away from using that term. But there are other people out there that, let's put it this way: cultural Marxism. They want you to think of the Rothschilds. They want you to think of Bilderbergers. They want you to think of George Soros, and that gets very creepy right there, and it does. So anyway, these are my thoughts, and with regard to corporations getting woke, I, I don't care if a corporation is woke or not. What I care about is how they treat their employees. Like, for example, with Colin Kaepernick, with the kneeling during the national anthem, and the right wing wants to cancel culture. Nike, the right wing will lecture you, the left, about cancel culture, but they practice it themselves by boycotting Nike shoes, boycotting J.C. Penney's because of Ellen DeGeneres, which I don't like the Ellen DeGeneres. I had my criticisms of her, but the fact that Ellen DeGeneres is attracted to other women, that's not the reason to dislike her, but it's the reason why the right hates her and they're wanting to go and boycott J.C. Penney. But I guess it's okay when they do it. It's okay when they boycott the Dixie Chicks. It's okay when they boycott J.C. Penney's and boycott Nike shoes. And when it comes to Nike shoes, there's good reason to boycott Nike shoes, like the way they treat people in the third world. They're the employees in the third world, underpaying them, and then bringing those shoes here instead of paying American workers a unionized living wage, and then selling it at inflated prices. But the culture wars on the right don't give a damn about that. In fact, a lot of them, in spite of their little silly American first rhetoric, could give two shits that people in the third world are, being paid starvation wages to produce products to be shipped into this country to be sold at inflated prices. So that's basically what's going on. So yeah, and the fact that these companies getting woke and supporting Black Lives Matter, supporting Antifa or what have you, that's fine and dandy. I mean, it's fine and dandy, but you know, pay the workers a living wage. I'd be impressed if these corporations would do that, or if the corporations, which it would benefit them if they would do this, but it would benefit all of American society. This is my chance to tell corporate America, if they're listening, please tell your politicians that you bribe. It is in your economic best interest to support Medicare for all, because it really is. It would save the free enterprise system if you have Medicare for all, but it will also help working families and individuals and provide non-exploitative economic growth. But and it's a disguised it's a disguised corporate gains tax cut too. By the way, the things that the right wing loves to have, they don't even realize it. But corporations would be experiencing a capital gains tax cut in disguise with universal health care. I'm sorry for going all over the place, but these are my thoughts. And I'm a little tired. I was out of town this weekend, had to go to the funeral. But what I'm just saying is that I think that there's really nothing to this cultural Marxism. Because honestly, if a corporation is woke on social issues, while I guess it's nice, it's not really doing anything to raise the wages of all people, which includes lower income people in the inner cities, providing opportunity for people. Because we have an economy right now that loves to put multiple barriers against opportunity, and we got to go and do something about that. Anyway, these are my thoughts. If you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you didn't comment anyway, we'll have a conversation. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you that if you have a platform, please utilize it because we're the muckrakers of our time. Feel free to share the content on this channel and feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And until next time, I am American Social Democracy. Peace and class struggle yesterday, class struggle today, class struggle tomorrow, and class struggle until we achieve full economic and social justice for all. And that includes the civil liberties of the oppressed groups, too.